What's up, everybody? You're serving the Tech Man, coming at you from Chicago, Illinois, 3527 South Halsted Street. Stay Lucky Tattoo. All right, folks, what this video is about, like the title reads, my tattoo nightmares. Very difficult. I've been wanting to make this video for a long time, but it's been a very difficult one to compose because I have to admit my mistakes here. But like I've mentioned previously, this channel is to educate, to help educate, however which way, informative, right? All right, so let's jump right in. All righty, how did this go down? How, what, when, and where? All righty, I'm working my shift this day. Beautiful day. Tattooed about 2 people already. Now it's time to take on my third walk-in of the day. And my third walk-in of the day was looking to get three minimalistic tattoos. I remember she wanted something behind her ear. It was like a guitar-looking symbol. She wanted something on her knuckle, and then she wanted the word faith on her forearm with like a wreath on it. So yeah, I was like, I type out, the word faith. I, put it on like Photoshop so she can get like some different fonts. She wasn't looking for a handwritten script. If that's what she wanted, I'd have wrote it out, no problem. But she wanted something like more specific. So we print out a couple fonts, type it out on the Procreate or the Photoshop. And then I print it out, show it to her. I gave her like a list. It's got like a few different styles on there of lettering. And so, she's there she's accompanied by a friend. So her friend's like checking out the designs and, she's helping her pick. So, she finally ends up choosing one. And, so we get down. And, like I said, the reason I mentioned that this was my third walk-in was because previously I had done a name already. I had done some lettering already, and I asked, the client if the spelling was correct. Before this nightmare happened, I used to always feel a little silly about asking about the spelling, though I knew it needed to be done. I always felt a little silly, and that's all in my head for whatever reason. But I on my second walk-in, she wanted like her son's name. And right before we start, I'm like, hey, I know this is silly, but I have to ask, is it spelled correctly? I mean, I don't know why I said it. I don't know why I know I said that. I know this is silly, but the point is that because it's not silly to ask, it's necessary. So I ask her, I'm like, hey, is it spelled correctly? And she goes like, oh, of course, honey. I'd have told you if it wasn't already. I'd have told you if it wasn't by now. Because she's looking at it, she's looking at me, and you're like, yeah, all right, cool. And that, and then I remember thinking like, oh, I know, I just have to ask. So if it's right, it's right, great. Let's let it roll. And it was correct. Everything was lovely. That was my second walk-in of the day. And so then I get to my third, which is the one I'm talking about now. And I broke the rule. I broke the rule. Like, I put on all the tattoos, she wanted. They're all positioned perfectly. The faith one is the last one to do. I do the tattoo, and, she looks at it. She looks at the stencil. Her friend looks at the stencil. They're like, all right, great, look, fabulous. All right, let's get the ball rolling. And I thought, I didn't ask because it's a simple word, right? And I was like, I remember thinking like I was so hung up on like making sure that it was like that, like I guess I saw like the last letters, the beginning and last letters of the word. I was like FA, and then I made sure the H was there, and I was like, yeah, it's good. And I kept repeating something in my head like it's right, FA, and so I didn't ask her because I thought I had it in the bag, but that was a giant mistake. We do the tattoo. She looks at it in the mirror. And then next thing you know, I'm just like thinking like, all right, cool, day's over, this is my third tat, I'm exhausted, I'm also really happy that I've been tattooing all day. But next thing you know, she looks in the mirror and she's like, wait, it's it's misspelled. And I was just like, what? What are you talking about? Where? How did this happen? Horrible feeling when you hear that. Horrible feeling. And I look at it, and sure as shit, it's Fatih. I swapped out the I and the T. Ridiculous, man. And now I'm just like, I thought I was done, and next thing you know, I'm just thinking like, what just happened? How did this happen? Her friend is there, like I mentioned earlier, and she's like, what happened, man? Did we keep you too long, or are you tired, man? What's the issue with you? And I'm simply saying like, no, there's no excuse. I'm not too tired. I can't believe this just happened. This wasn't supposed to happen. I don't know. And my fault, I just didn't ask her to check it for me like a fool. That was a giant mistake. Never do that, people. Always ask about the spelling. Every time, no matter how dumb you may feel, like I used to feel. Now, I always ask. But she's like, what do we do? And I was like, the first thing I said to her, I just blurted out, I'm like, we gotta laser it. And she's just like, okay. And then like, she's like, when can we get this done? And I was like, you know what? I mean, I'm gonna have to tell the owner about this, tell the boss, and we're gonna have to go from there, see what we can do. And I was like, we might be able to cover it, like maybe we can cover it. I don't know. And she wasn't too keen on the idea because like she was a minimalistic kind of person, so she wasn't like looking to get more art, like art that she just wasn't looking to get another design on top of it. What sounded better for her was to just like maybe like what I said initially, and it was like to laser it. So like she was kind of stuck on that idea because like what we would have to do is maybe just laser the T, make that into the I, and then make the I into the T, extend the I and make it into a T. So then therefore we would have Faith versus Fatih. So, it seemed like it could have been done to be fixed. But then, like before we do the laser sessions, like I had brought this up to the boss, and like he's looking to see like maybe we can cover it. He's like, what about, like we're like, since the boss wasn't a tattoo artist, he knew of the tattoo game, but he didn't know everything that could be done maybe. So I used to work at a really big shop. It was like 15 artists where I worked at, all had a lot of different like capabilities and experience. So now the boss is now the boss has figured we're gonna involve everybody. We're gonna try to figure this one out as a collective. Incredibly embarrassing, but it's what I deserve. So now we're going around the shop, going to artists and being like, hey, and asking like, hey, what is your thoughts on something like this? What would you do here? And then like, guys were like getting ideas like, oh, we can maybe, one fella commented like, what if we do a little bit of flesh tone ourselves? Knock out that T and make it into an I, and then continue. We can do that. Others recommended a cover up, which I thought was cool. We could probably use a flower. A flower or a butterfly. Camouflage the whole, tattoo the whole face, because it wasn't like so like intricate. Obviously, it's not that intricate. So, like we could probably have a more complex design to camouflage those things and blur them out. So I run her these ideas, and she's more on like let's just like camouflage it with the flesh tone, because she didn't want a whole nother tattoo. She didn't want a whole different tattoo. She didn't have a whole lot. She wasn't giving me a whole lot of flexibility. She didn't want to compromise much. Understandable. Whatever. It's my mistake. I'm the one that fucked up. So the boss is having me like maybe do my homework, is like figure out what you can do, present it to her. But we ended up going with the flesh tones because like, again, she didn't want the whole image. So we're going to try to just fix the lettering. But it was very difficult to like get that flesh tone, and it was still like obvious. Like you could still see something was happening there. Like it covered it a little, but we were going to need to do more layers. And it was just such a horrible like experience, because it's like I didn't have experience doing cover-ups at all, really. I don't really do much cover-ups to this day. But so I didn't know like what flesh tone to use. I didn't know what it would heal like. I didn't know how many times it would take to like really fully cover it. So I'm just kind of like lost in this whole situation. I put a little flesh tone in, but it wasn't looking any good. I still saw the other tattoo. The flesh tone didn't match hers. Now we're just getting in deeper, right? Is how it felt. I'm like, wow, this is just getting worse and worse. And so then, like, she's like, what about, what about with this laser? What about lasering it? And I was like, all right, we can go with that route. So I tell the boss, she's wanting to do laser. I explained to him, like, she doesn't want to cover it. This isn't working out. She just wants to laser it. Can I pay for her laser session? And the boss was like on my, he was kind of like, he was definitely like on my side, as I would say, as far as like saying like, he wasn't saying I was completely at fault. He felt as though it was both of our fault, the client and mine, because we neither of us saw it. It was my fault because I didn't ask her. I'm the one that typed it out. So I do feel mainly at fault. I don't know if I should be fully at fault. Whatever. I'll take responsibility, of course. But so my boss kind of looked at it like, yeah, you know what, man, we can get her the session, but like but that this wasn't really fully your fault and this and that. Fine. And then we're looking to just like laser off a portion of it, just the incorrect letters, laser those off, kind of like what I try to do with the flesh tone, but now we're just going to try to laser it. And then, the boss was on board. Now we had to go look. I was on board too. I'm like, let's get it going. But boss wanted to find a, we were looking to see if maybe one of these laser treatment establishments were willing to work with us, since we're like in the industry, tattoo industry. Maybe they'd be willing to like, help us with the price, maybe it didn't have to be full price, maybe whatever. So we had to do a little bit of research. She was also doing her research, and she was looking to just maybe give me the bill, which I was more inclined to do, because like I kind of just wanted to really just be done with it. So I was just like, if money will solve this problem, then please let me throw it there, because like, geez, this is something I just want to get over with now. And but it wasn't that easy, because like I gotta do with what the boss is telling, we gotta go to handle this how the boss wants me to handle it. And so what he was looking to do was like maybe find a company that can work with us. So we had to jump through so many hoops, because he ultimately found a company that a tattoo removal business that was like willing to like do it for us. He just looked at it like the owner was just looking to see if we can get him clients, maybe send people his way. Not get him clients by needing people to remove their tattoos, but assuming somebody asks us, I'm like, hey, do you guys know about removal? We can send them over his way. And yeah, so getting back to it. So like now we have found a place that's willing to do it, but they only have a certain amount of like availability, because the way it worked is like they did removal and piercings at their place, but the removal was done by a doctor that would fly in from like Florida or some out of state, doctor, and he'd fly in, do a couple laser sessions, and fly out, go back to wherever he's from, wherever the doctor was from. And so like when we present a couple of some available slots for her, but they don't work for her schedule. Like, no, I can't take off of work. This isn't good. I need these days. She needed something very specific, understandably so. She didn't have flexibility. So this is all just making this whole scenario even just throwing hurdles and obstacles my way. And so we finally are able to book her a session. We are finally able to book her a session. And And so like she finally gets, I guess, like maybe one session done. And the way I looked at it was like, the way I understood it was that once she was being under their care and started procedures with them, that then she no longer was my that no longer was my burden, my responsibility. So, like we get her first session, and I was like, great. I thought I had dusted my hands off with that one. I'm like, good God, thank you. We've got her to the place, and we finally, and that has started. But being in customer service, my boss asks me to reach out. He's like, hey, have you heard from so and so? And I was like, no, I haven't. I was like, maybe you should reach out, and I'd like you to reach out, just so they know that you're like concerned, or maybe not so much concerned, but that you're like, that you care about like how things are going. I reach out, and she tells me, I'm like, hey, how's it going? I heard you got and how did the laser go? How's laser going? And she's like, hey, I actually haven't been back. I went for my first session, but I haven't been back. She says, can you reconnect me with them? And so I relay this back to the boss, and he's like, well, he's like, well, I believe you can respond by telling her you can respond with, this is now your responsibility to follow through with the appointments, and to stay in contact with them. That's what I tell her. They don't say any, she doesn't respond to that. But but the boss must have talked with the owner and mentioned that, hey, I heard so and so didn't come back. And then they ended up, like, I guess, like that, the boss mentioning that to the laser removal company. They reach out back to her, and I guess they ended up getting back in touch. She tells me like, hey, thanks for reconnecting us. And I was like, great. And so basically that's how, like I actually haven't reached back out since then. Since that time, I want to believe that like I have done what I needed to do when it came to that. I'd like to believe, a part of me is curious, and I believe I will reach out again. But at the same time, I'm also like, if I haven't heard from her, because this wasn't getting dropped until it was resolved. Like, I was gonna continue to hear from her until I found a place to get it removed. I was gonna continue to hear from her, until we got the ball rolling. Like, this wasn't just gonna disappear. She wasn't gonna disappear. The boss was aware of it. This wasn't just gonna like go away, unless she disappeared. But no, joking. But yeah, like I got them back in communications, and I was able, with the help of my boss, we were able to find a laser company to remove that, and remove the tattoo. And I believe, she had booked her second session. I know that she had gotten her first, and that she was in communications to get the next. So I really do, I really do hope that tattoo has been, that tattoo has been fixed. Like, it was definitely a very, very difficult one. There was so many hurdles, and a huge learning experience. This happened a few years back. Unfortunately, not proud to admit that it happened later on in my career, but it happened. I have never ever forgotten to ask anybody about the spelling. I have definitely been left. That definitely left an impact in me. The procedure, like getting her booked took time. Again, because we had to go find a laser place that would do it, because I wanted to pay for it, but my boss wanted to be able to find a way to not, because he believed he can do it, and he did. You know, he believed he can do it, and he did. You know, my hat's off to him, because you know, like, he showed me, you know, being persistent, and you know, you can get there, because, like, you know, like, again, she didn't want any cover-ups, and you know, it had to be done that way. And you know, other misspelled situations have an easier solution. You know, they can be, and they're, regardless of how easily it can be solved. A tattoo mistake is a nightmare. A tattoo mistake is nothing that anybody ever wants to experience. But it happens. It happens. I don't know if anybody's gone through their career scot-free of any sort of situation. Again, I don't know if I said this earlier, but this is a very difficult video to make, because it's very embarrassing, you know, to admit these things, but it's the God honest truth. There have been other times I've misspelled stuff, spelled tattoos, earlier in my career, and but the thing is, they weren't my fault, you know, like, because I had covered my base. You know, I've known to ask. I just made the mistake this time to not ask, and it was very detrimental. But you know, before, you know, earlier on, I remember having a walk-in come in, and he wanted a word that was like in Latin. I think it was like fidelis et mortem, something around those lines. Don't quote me, people. I didn't look that up before I made this video, so I can like tell you exactly what it said. But I do remember fidelis, and fidelis. When I wrote it out for him, I asked him, because I wrote it out custom script that time, as I prefer. And I asked him, and he gave me the green light. So I was like, let's go. The green light was given. I execute. Tattoo's done. And he's looking at it like, we're missing an eye. And I was like, I asked you, my friend. And he's like, yeah, you did. And then he was there with his wife. And I remember she just kind of like burst out in like a laugh. Kind of like, ha! Like, he asked you. And then he was kind of like, yeah, he did. And I was like, yeah, man, I asked, man. I don't know this word. I don't know this language. You told me how it went down. And you gave me the green light. So what ended up happening is it was missing an I at like the end of the word of fidelis. It was like yeah, it was just missing the I at the end. So he just asked me to just put an I inside there, like squeeze the I inside this cursive script. It looked off, obviously, but it was no longer missing the letter. And you know, and he was happy. He was like satisfied with that. He was like, it was my mistake. Shoved the letter in. Boom, we're good. I think the fellow was a cop, so it was like he couldn't be with a misspelled word. Not saying anybody can be, but you know, you're probably like a criminal notices that or something. You know, you're gonna probably be he's probably gonna lose respect. His colleagues, you know, are gonna clown him. You know, I don't know what the cop world is like, but I don't think it's necessarily, you know, I guess it doesn't matter what career you're in. Having a misspelled word on your form is going to be very, very difficult to like manage day to day. So, you know, I sympathize with the woman. I misspelled her name. I misspelled that faith on. I sympathize with her very much, because I felt very bad. I felt terrible. I was very proud of the other tattoos I made on her, and that day was a nice day. The reason I mentioned that was my third tattoo, the reason I had to mention that was because I was excited that day. I was excited that day. I was like, I knocked one out, I had knocked out another, and then I was on my third, and I just get the ball rolling. I was happy to be making money. I was proud of the tattoos I was making. Like, they were coming out good. I was like, yeah, looking good. I'm proud of my work, you know? But I got caught up in the moment. That was it. Like, I was just caught up in the moment. Not saying that I was rushing anything, but I was just excited, you know, and so I missed a step, and that's what happened. But anyways, so other times that it hasn't been my mistake, it hasn't been my fault, you know. And you know, as I tell this story, I find it funny that it's been like the letter I, that has been like the issue in my mistakes. And my name is Irvin. My name starts with an I. Letter I is my favorite letter. Yet it comes to haunt me. Missed the I in fidelis. And then one time Another time I misspelled the name, it was the word California. But I also wrote it out. Don't judge me, guys. You know, when you're drawing a word, you forget to spell. You know, the spelling becomes secondary because now you're focused on the art of the letter, of the word. So I wrote out California. I asked him, is it right? He said yes. I tattoo it. I run to go get my phone so I can go get a photo of it. And he's like, wait, it's missing an I. I wrote out California. Missing an I. It was his mistake. Everybody knew that it was his mistake because he was there with the group and he gave me the green light. He's like, is there anything we can do? I'm like, I don't know what to say to you, man. He's like, can I get my money back? And I gave it back to him, you know, even though it was his mistake, but he got the misspelled word on his foot forever. And it was like, and I had put it on him. So, you know, like, I gave him back his money. I didn't want to fight with him about it. And no, there's no reason to argue about it for me. I was like, all right, take it. That was a mistake I made there. Well, I misspelled the word, but you know, I had asked, so they couldn't really like hold it against me. Like I didn't really think like anything would come from it, and nothing did. I felt very bad. You know, it's very difficult to get. It's not difficult to get past. It just takes time. You know, it takes time to get like, you know, not lose sleep. If you give a damn, you know, if you have some sort of compassion, you know, you think about those things, and so. You know, and here's another funny thing that a lot of people don't know, but I do bring up from time to time, is that I have a giant misspelled word. At least it was, and and it's across my stomach. You know, I got the word sacrificio, sacrifice in Spanish, and it reads SACRIFICIO. But it initially was missing the I as well. I went from C directly into an O. And then, but the O wasn't fully finished. You know, the O kind of had like an opening. It has an opening. So what we ended up doing, once I realized that it was wrong, because that was my fault. That was my fault. I looked at it when he drew it on me, and I was like, let's go, green light. It's slapped on, and then I look at it again. I'm just like reading it, and I realized that it was missing the I. It was missing the I because they went C-O. So what we ended up doing is we just converted that O into the I by adding a tittle, and then adding another O, as you can see. Adding another O. So as you can see, there's like an overlap here because this was initially an O, and so like. Yeah, so I ended up just shoving the I in there. And now it reads sacrificio, but the wording isn't that clear, you know. I was just being reckless, you know, with my body at a point in time in my life, you know, just getting inked up because I could, you know. Brand new to the game, brand new to tattooing. I was a fresh tattooer. I work with a bunch of tattoo artists. We're all tattooing ourselves. So I was just moving kind of fast, I guess. You know, I was just eager to get my stomach done, and I end up dropping the ball on my own self. And you know, it bothers me a little. I like my stomach just being tatted. Like I like the tattoo on my stomach. So that alone is like cool. I like that it looks that way. Nobody even really cares to read it. You know, it's just like it just looks like art on my gut. So that's what makes me happy about it. The letters are all there. I would have liked it if I could have, you know, maybe have gotten a clean letters on my gut, you know. But, you know, it is what it is. Life lessons, you know, lessons in life. Take your time, right? Take your time. When a friend told me this quote, it's always stuck to me. Slow down to speed up, you know. It's the truth. You slow down, take your time, you're going to be moving at a good pace, you know? You're going to be moving at the right pace. So yeah, you know, like, it happens, and you know, it's definitely nothing. It's definitely something serious, and I learned from my mistake. Never forgotten to ask. I even asked like my coworker to also give it a look, get multiple eyes on that design, make sure the thing is right, because it's so easy. It's so easy to make a little slip up, and it can be avoided though. You know, it can be avoided. So take your time, people. You know, yeah, ask your client. Don't feel silly like I used to. And yeah, I really hope this video helps somebody. This was like I said, it was tough to make. It's embarrassing. But I want to help somebody. At the end of the day, my mistake has occurred. I've surpassed these issues, thankfully. This is why I'm making the video, because like there can be light at the end of the tunnel. Even though it looked like I wanted the earth to swallow me and make me disappear for forever. So, but you know, it's not the end of the world. You know, they don't die. As long as you don't get beat up, as long as you don't get sued, you know, all that stuff can happen. And so that's why it's a nightmare. Yeah, people, respect tattooing. Respect the game, man. Never takes tattooing lightly. I've made those mistakes, but you know, under right guidance, we can avoid those things. So I hope this video helps somebody, and thank you for viewing. Hit me up if you're looking to get a tattoo. You guys know my information. You guys know where I'm located. If you like this video, if you found it useful, give it a like, share, you know, give it a little comment. It'll help. But ultimately, I hope I help you. I really do. And yeah, until next time, folks, you know, thank you for viewing. I'll catch you on the next one. Peace.